Sorry, I realized I wasn't recording. Okay. Make sure you can share my screen. So our immune system's lying right outside of that gut lining, and we want to keep all of the food and bacteria, anything that's going through our gut, we want to keep that inside so it doesn't go outside that barrier into the bloodstream. Because when things get outside into the bloodstream, our immune system reacts because it thinks it's a foreign invader and it elicits an immune response. So it's like the body sees this foreign thing and it freaks out and starts triggering inflammation in the body. Okay, so that's like very high level general of what's happening, what leaky gut is. And that inflammation can fuel basically every chronic disease that there is. And so one of the analogies I like to think about from, it's a Dr. Paul Saladino suggested this, is if y'all know The Price is Right, the Planko game, where you like basically put in a chip and it goes down and it may go like to some different destination. Well, that's kind of how we are. It's like we have this inflammatory trigger, this inflammation happening, but it may manifest for you in a thyroid condition. It may manifest for your sister in multiple sclerosis or joint pain or anxiety, depression. So it can manifest in so many different ways. And so all of these diseases, although they look so different, are actually coming from very similar root causes, which is inflammation. So the reason gluten can be so detrimental for many people is because it promotes leaky gut, which is basically when you eat gluten, it produces a protein called zonulin, and zonulin allows the little junctions between the cells of the gut lining to open up. And that allows food and bacteria and toxins to break into the bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there, and it causes that immune response. Okay, and so this gluten action of what's happening with the zonulin production is not just limited to people with celiac disease. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't have celiac, so I don't have issues with gluten. But that's not the case. This zonulin, this intestinal permeability or increased intestinal permeability is happening in everyone that eats gluten. But whether the immune response is enough for you to notice is dependent on who you are, what other stresses are in your life. And so a lot of times people will be like, well, I've eaten bread my whole life and I've never had issues. And now all of a sudden, like, why am I developing a thyroid disorder or having digestive symptoms? And that's because it can be a slow chipping away, and eventually you just have too much on your system and your body can't handle it anymore. And so, does that make sense to everybody, what I'm saying? Okay. And so the other part of this is that we've got leaky gut, but we also have a barrier system in our brain. And our brain is hypersensitive, and we've got these cells called glial cells that are immune related. So if you eat gluten, for a lot of people, it can break through the blood-brain barrier. You basically have leaky brain, and your glial cells are like firing bazookas. Like, they don't want anything crossing that blood-brain barrier that's not supposed to be there. So what happens? They react, they have a huge reaction, cause a lot of inflammation, and they damage brain tissue. And then that damaged brain tissue needs antibodies to come clean it up. So you produce antibodies to this brain tissue, and then those antibodies are reacting to gluten, firing more bazookas, and then it's just this like cycle of collateral damage. So you're damaging brain tissue, you're causing neural inflammation. So there's so many people that are experiencing brain fog after they eat. They're experiencing like cases of dementia is inflammation based, cognitive disorders, so much ADHD, autism. Like, it is insane how much of this is driven by gluten. And so I just can't emphasize enough that this, even though in these 21 days, a lot of the other foods you may be able to tolerate well, gluten is one that I personally think that most of us would thrive better without. And so it might not be something that you want to put back in, but it can also be like, listen to your body. If you feel like you eat it and you're not having any symptoms, then maybe eating bread once in a while would be okay. But the reason I think, and here's a little, what was I going to say? Oh, the reason like cheat meals don't work when it comes to gluten is because these reactions they're not just like an allergy where you eat something and it's immediate and then it like goes down. A sensitivity, this kind of immune response can last for weeks, even months for some people. And so your gut lining turns over about every 5 to 7 days. So you have like new cells, but so there can be a lot of healing that happens in the gut within a very short period of time of like getting off these foods. But if you continue to eat, every once a week you're having like a cheat meal, you're you're damaging the gut lining, you're creating an immune response that may be lasting way longer than a week. So you may have had this cheat meal on Monday, but you're experiencing symptoms 2 weeks later. And so that's why these longer elimination periods where we can get the inflammation response down to actually see how we feel. And I think that's where it can be a little confusing for people. They'll be like, I went on gluten-free and I didn't feel any better, but they might not have gone long enough. And it can take months to actually feel the full results from a gluten-free diet. And the thing is, very small amounts for certain people, very small amounts, even 1/8 the amount of a fingernail can cause a really large reaction in the body. And so I've had clients that have had horrible IBS and digestive symptoms, and they're not eating like bread or anything, but they're having like a couple croutons on a salad or like just little small bites here and there, and it's causing major issues. And so I'm not saying this is for everyone, but knowing that it's not this like, it's not, if you are having immune symptoms, autoimmunity or digestive issues, joint pain and things, it's not just like an 80-20 rule. It's kind of like this is the one case that it may be like an all or nothing. But for a lot of people, you may have some inflammation from gluten, but your body's able to cope and doesn't manifest into symptoms. So I don't want to make you think also if like you eat a bite then like everything's gone and you like are gonna have this huge immune reaction. But I just want you to be aware that this can be the case, and if you're having issues, then it's really important to be kind of very diligent with this. And it's often missed when it comes to testing. So a lot of times you go to the general doctor and they'll just test you for a celiac disease, and most people don't have celiac disease, and so they're like, no, you're fine with gluten, when that's not the case, because there's so many different mechanisms that the body that isn't celiac that can be having issues with gluten. And we have actually 6 immune mechanisms. They're different, if you can think of them as different like different defense forces, like the Army, the Marines, the Coast Guard, I'm spacing out, but anyways, they're just like different defenses. We've got our IgA, IgG, IgE, IgM, IgD mechanisms. So even if an IgA mechanism is, or I'm sorry, an IgE mechanism is like an allergy. Like for me personally, I'm allergic to peanuts. If I eat a peanut, my throat will close up, or you get a rash. Like that's an immediate allergy reaction. That's an IgE reaction. And then we've got the IgG and IgA that are more systemic reactions, and one of them is for the mucosal linings. And so it's like all these different ways that the body may be reacting, but a lot of testing that's done is only testing 1 or 2 of them. So things can be missed. And that's why I personally think elimination diets and actually testing yourself by eliminating completely for an X period of time and then seeing how you feel is the best way to test if you tolerate a food, just because a lot of testing can be missed. Does this make sense? No? Melanie, or did you shake your head no? Okay, I'm like, okay. And just to highlight also that glowing gluten-free, a lot of gluten-free products, you just have to be mindful of, a lot of other grains will cross-react with gluten. So basically, if you're hypersensitive, you have protein, like the gluten protein has, say it's like A, B, C, D, E. Well, this other grain is like A, B, C, D, F. And your body, because it's so hyperreactive, is shooting bullets at a lot of other things. So a lot of times things like dairy will cross-react and other grains will cross-react. And basically you're having the same immune reaction, even though you're having the same immune reaction because your body's thinking something is gluten that it's not, if that makes sense. And one thing that can be really like for thyroid issues, your thyroid tissue is cross-reacted with gluten. So actually the proteins of the thyroid look similar to gluten, and your body starts attacking your own thyroid tissue. And that's eventually can develop Hashimoto's, and that is an autoimmune thyroid issue or disorder. And yeah, so any questions on gluten? I don't mean to overwhelm or to scare you at all. It's just, I think it's so important to know. And actually, I do want to dive into this part. For the brain and for neurological disorders, I think that every single person should be educated on this, that gluten, when you're not digesting it properly, it creates something called a gluteomorphin. And dairy does this too, and it's called a caseomorphin. I'm going to talk about that when we go into dairy. But what happens is this is a morphine-like compound that acts like an opioid on your brain. Okay, and so meaning like it gives you that like pleasure sensation. It gives you so that's why like dairy and gluten and carbs can be so addictive. Gluten carbs can be so addictive. But what happens is those opioid receptors are meant for your other neurotransmitters. They're meant for your dopamine, which is like your motivation and you want to go do things. And it's meant for your serotonin, your pleasure chemicals. And those, when you're having this interruption because of the gluten molecules, these gluteomorphins binding to them, it can cause major neurological effects. So things from anxiety, depression to schizophrenia, autism, bipolar disorder. And a lot of these things, it may not be that gluten is necessarily causing some of these things like schizophrenia, but it is fueling it. And there's so many cases of people with schizophrenia that have a reversal of symptoms because they go on a gluten-free, casein-free diet. There's so many cases of autistic children who are having massive improvements in their behavioral symptoms, their handwriting changes, like kids with ADHD when they get off of gluten and dairy. And so I just want to bring this to you because especially for things like anxiety and depression, like they can be night and day differences when you get off these foods. And that was a big fuel for me when I was kind of going through elimination, was like just the awareness around what these could be doing. Okay, so dairy, there's a lot of misinformation around dairy. One of the quotes from Mark Hyman, Dr. Mark Hyman, he says, if someone gave you a beverage that you knew would cause you to gain weight, give you eczema, give you brittle bones, and possibly cause cancer, and I missed bloating and acne, would you drink it? And the answer is probably no. But that is what many people are doing, drinking a lot of milk. And to start off with, 70% of the world suffers from lactose intolerance. So lactose is the sugar in milk, and a lot of people don't digest it well because most of us stop producing the enzyme to digest lactose after the age of 2. And milk is meant for a baby animal trying to triple, like dairy milk is meant for a baby calf trying to triple its weight in a matter of months. So it's filled with hormones and growth factors, and it's insulinogenic, which means it drives our fat storage hormone because it wants you to gain weight. And most of us don't want to triple our weight in a matter of months, and we don't need these reproductive hormones and these it's got a lot of allergenic proteins and this insulin response that most of us don't want, as we talked with the sugar causing the insulin drive up. So we want to be, that's one part of why dairy may not be the best option. And the milk today is not what our grandparents drank. So like a classic, if you go to the store and just get like any old milk, it's typically filled with the reproductive hormones I mentioned, allergenic proteins, antibiotics, and these growth factors that may be highly cancer promoting. They, especially with insulin-fueled cancers. Okay. And then with dairy, so I mentioned the high insulin response, so driving weight gain, driving this things from obesity, diabetes, insulin-fueled cancers like breast cancer and colon cancer. And then the other reason is this casein protein. So we've got the lactose issue that a lot of people have issues digesting lactose, so which that can cause a lot of just like digestive distress, gas, bloating. But the other part of it is the casein protein. This is the one that cross-reacts with gluten for many people who are intolerant or insensitive are sensitive to gluten also react to this dairy protein. And then it can promote leaky gut, which is causing inflammation throughout the body. And dairy is really very much linked to allergies, like seasonal allergies, creating a lot of mucus, acne, especially if cystic acne. So many people see so many benefits in their skin when they get off dairy. Anxiety is a huge one. And for children, like if people with chronic sinus infections or earaches, a lot of this is driven by dairy. Same thing with skin issues like eczema and psoriasis. Okay. And then the same opioid effect to the brain. So not digesting milk properly creates these casomorphins that have that opioid effect on the brain. And that's why cheese is so addictive for some people. Like, can't imagine living without cheese. This is why. Because the reason milk has this opioid effect is so evolutionarily we would drink milk. We would drink our mom's milk to stay alive. So it has this natural, this pleasure that our brain wants. Well, in cheese, it is highly concentrated. That casein protein is highly concentrated. So you're getting a huge dose of this opioid, and that's where it can cause so many issues in the brain and that addictive tendency to want cheese all the time. And there's withdrawal symptoms when you get off cheese if you're somebody that's just like has that reaction to it. And yeah. Any questions around that? Okay. And then people often ask, so well, what about calcium? What am I going to do if I'm not drinking milk? Because we've been kind of programmed that milk equals good bones and healthy calcium levels. And it's actually kind of false. What they're showing now is that actually the countries with the higher rates of milk consumption are the ones with the highest rates of osteoporosis. And there are non-dairy sources of calcium that we can get them from. One of the best ways, this is kind of a weird way, but if you can like get it to work into your life, then it can be really easy. Eggshells. So what you do is boiling eggshells and then you just dry them out and put them in a blender and process them. Because one eggshell has 2.2 grams of calcium, which the daily recommended dose is only 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams. And so you can get double your amount of calcium by just powdering up some eggshells. You can throw them in a smoothie. You won't even taste them. And so that's probably the best, easiest way to get your calcium. The other foods that have it are sesame seeds, sardines, multiple greens like I've listed, spinach, bok choy, collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, salmon, almonds, and almond milk. Almond milk is also a really good way you can get calcium. And I think one of the biggest issues with calcium is also the need for vitamin D to absorb it. And so a lot of people may be deficient just because they're actually deficient in vitamin D. So we've got calcium. And then as far as like, if you do want milk sometimes, so I don't want to completely demonize it because for some people you may be fine with it. And I would say just have in moderation because of the amount of hormones and growth factors. So drinking it every single day or eating like a ton of cheese may not be your best bet. But if you are going to eat milk, goat's and sheep's milk is a different type of casein protein. And there's also certain cows that are different types. So the one that is the most problematic is A1 casein. And so you could always try out an A2 casein, A2 cow milk. You may have heard that before. And then goat's and sheep's milk for some people are easier to digest and don't have that casein protein that can cause a lot of issues. However, these milks still have lactose, and many of us don't digest lactose well. So this is where after these 21 days, or maybe you go a little longer, that you try this out for yourself and reintroduce milk. These kind of different types of milk, I would say do it kind of separately to see what works best for you, or certain types of cheeses and see what works best for you. And there's also raw milk, which has enzymes in it. So right now our milks are pasteurized, which means they strip out all the enzymes that help us digest milk. So some people actually tolerate raw milk that can't tolerate regular milk. So this is where it becomes kind of an experiment with your own body. What do you feel good doing? A lot of times after breaking through that like cheese addiction, for anyone that really loves cheese, realizing that you don't really miss it and there's not a need to have it in the diet. The other things is that butter has low levels of casein, so you may be fine with grass-finished butter is what I'd recommend if you're gonna eat it. And then ghee being the best alternative because it doesn't have any lactose or casein. And then definitely buy organic, grass-fed, so you're not getting like the milk stores so many of those antibiotics and hormones. So it's so worth the extra $1 or $2 to pay for the really good farm-raised cow's milk. All right, so that was the deep dive into gluten and dairy. How's everyone feeling? Do you feel worse about it? Do you feel more motivated about it?
I feel motivated, but very, very sad.
Why do you feel sad?
Because I love it.
That's so understandable.
Because
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much milk I consumed and how much I love cheese. So it's just very disheartening.
But did it open your eyes about the addiction part of it?
Yes, and also the whole skincare, because hilariously, my skin has looked better than it has in a very long time, and I don't want to equate that with dairy.
Yes.
Your
I'm
gluten, your gluten comments really opened my mind. Most of my husband's family is gluten free, and I've been guilty of kind of rolling my eyes a little bit of like, will it really hurt that much to have like a crouton? But that was really eye opening for me to understand that.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm glad that you had that takeaway. For sure.
And maybe I can do a little less gluten. I mean, this is open. I don't really miss bread, or I'm not a big milk person. I miss cheese a little bit right now, but I don't. You're right. I don't feel like I really need it. But I feel like I don't know if I could say I'll never have it again. You know?
Absolutely. And I think I mean I don't want to say that it's like even if you are 80/20 in the future, like that's still so great.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not having immune responses. Like if you feel good and you're having it just like once in a while, like that can be totally fine. It's just for if you are having issues, then it might need to be like the full elimination. Yes, thank you. Everyone's sad. Everyone's sad. I don't want to make everyone sad. I think once you start feeling good and then you just stop missing it and then it's the sadness kind of turns into like I don't know, like empowerment.
I agree with you because after doing 30 days on the whole 30, and I love cheese just like everybody else, but after feeling so good, I didn't miss it as much. But then I just slowly started being lazy or just wanting that queso or whatever. So I'm going to have to try really hard to remember that I feel good when I'm not eating it. Keep that in mind.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, and I think that is kind of goes back to what I think I've said last week was just like, what are we yesing? So like, yeah, okay, I could eat a bowl of queso, but like, I really want to feel like, how do I want to feel? I want to feel like I love my skin being clear. Like I'm saying yes to that. I'm saying yes to losing the weight that I've been carrying or the energy that I've been looking for. Like I'm gonna choose that versus this bowl of queso. But then maybe sometimes you're like, you know what? My skin's gonna break out and I'm gonna be okay with it. So it's just kind of a conscious choice is what I want to provide you guys is not saying any of your choices would be good or bad. It's just like having the knowledge, you know that now that this is what it can be happening in your body. And it's like, okay, well, then being able to make a choice about it versus just thinking that milk's healthy because that's it's been very preached at to people a lot due to the dairy industry. Yes.
Is there like the cheese that's a little bit better?
Is there what?
Is there like a certain type of cheese that's a little bit better?
Yeah, cheese that's a little bit better. Definitely. So after these 21 days, reintroducing things like I mentioned, like maybe some raw milk, like some aged raw milk based cheese, or like try goat's cheese and sheep's based cheese. See if you tolerate those better. You can take a digestive enzyme when you eat cheese if you're having any digestive issues, like from the lactose. So I can, ones I like, I take these not just for, I take these like for most of my meals. Masszymes. Oops, autocorrect. And it'll help break down. It's not like I'll take this, now I can eat a bunch of queso. That's not how this works, but it can help break if you're having especially lactose issues. And then other cheese, so goat's milk, sheep's milk cheese would definitely be a better bet. And then making sure if you are getting dairy cheese that it is organic. And then cashew cheese and all the So Delicious brand and Miyokos brand, those are some alternatives if you're really wanting something. Or Daya. Okay, any other? Aubrey says, don't miss milk or cheese since I made a switch. Great, Aubrey. Marta, are the vegan cheeses okay? Okay, great question. So kind of what Ruby was asking, I think the cashew-based cheeses and almond-based cheese, if you do well with those, some of them have some xanthan, like some different gums in them, which are okay if you tolerate them well. So this is all, again, I know sorry to not ever give y'all clear answers, but it's like, listen to your body, try them out, see how you feel. But these seem to be a lot better for some people. I would just avoid the soy. And I'll post a video about soy this week. So I don't want to overwhelm you. But I would avoid the soy-based ones and choose ones more that are like almond milk or cashew milk. All right. And for the rest of this call, if you think of questions, please feel free to drop in the chat. But I did want to invite you guys to give you space to map out your weekend. So I know it might be a little early to map out week 3. I recommend it if you want to do that. But at least to map out your weekend, since this is a holiday weekend, and I know it can get a little loosey-goosey on those weekends. So does anyone, I put a weekend planner. I'll share my screen with you. Here's the weekend planner. I posted this in the hub. Wait, I see someone has a question.
That's me, Ellie. I need a pizza crust in a very bad way.
Yeah, my
I
favorite.
want to buy one and not make one because the recipes seem just too much for me to handle. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. I don't like making cauliflower crust. The brand I like it's Kali Foods. And the reason I like them, you get the plant-based one. They have a couple. Some of them have dairy, so just check the plant-based
Yeah,
ones.
because I found them, but I thought they had dairy and that it wasn't. So there is one without dairy?
Yeah, it's the green package. I actually think they have a couple, but I know the one it's like green labeling and it says plant-based on it. And the reason I like these is because they're low carb, and they're actually just cauliflower and spices. A lot of cauliflower pizza crusts are filled with brown rice and they're super carby, so they're like, I mean, besides them, they're great because they're gluten-free, but a lot of them, it's like you could just get same carb amount as a DiGiorno pizza. So definitely better, but still, these ones are like super low carb and they're really good. They're really good as flatbreads, like with pesto and stuff. They're good.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But for your weekend, so I want to give you guys, create space for you to sit down. Even if you have a notepad right now, can you map out, like if I set a timer for 5 minutes, could you just write out some ideas of what you could do for we've got Friday dinner, Saturday and Sunday, everything. So if I set a timer, you don't have to use this sheet if you since, but you can just get some paper out. Or type it. And if you need ideas or you have questions about what you're gonna do for Father's Day stuff, put it in the chat or you can speak up. I need lunch ideas from Susan. So Susan, some lunch ideas that I love. I don't want to distract. But things like the chicken salad are great. You can make a big bowl of chicken salad and eat that for a couple days with either like those crackers I mentioned, the siete or the Simple Mills, or make a wrap with the siete tortillas, or you could do some zoodles or with pesto, or even like a deli meat wrap, are really easy. Aubrey says. Applegate deli meat is what I would recommend. They're a great brand. Yeah. And Aubrey says hearts of palm noodles. Those are so good. If you, she posted the other day. They're super low carb and they're like a lot heartier than a zoodle, and they're so easy because they're already noodled. And you just pour them out and saute them. They come in a can or a pouch. Yay! So give y'all one more minute to finish your meal plans, or at least scope it out. And then I want to ask you what your plans are for Father's Day if you're doing anything. And your intentions for fitness this weekend. All right, so wrapping it up, if you'll type in the chat, how are you planning to move your body this weekend? I want to know, and I can hold you accountable. So whatever you type in here, get ready to be held accountable. I'm just kidding, but I really will. Melanie's gonna go walking or take the boys on a bike ride. Yes. Aubrey's gonna try to make Bridget's yoga tomorrow. Yes, we have yoga tomorrow morning and Pilates on Sunday. Or bar. Alex is making turkey burgers and sweet potato fries. Spaghetti squash baked, boiled shrimp for Father's Day. Yes. And if y'all have cake on Father's Day, anybody, one thing that you can do that's super helpful is doing like a mug cake for yourself. So obviously you may not want to make like a whole cake for yourself, but you can make a one serving thing in a mug cake. They're super easy. And if you need recipes for that, I'll post those in the group. And they take like 2 minutes. You just pop them in the microwave, or you can put them in the oven. And other things, just have like dark chocolate instead, or like some other up-level dessert. And does anyone feel like they have anything coming up this weekend that would be challenging besides Father's Day, or that you're nervous about? Kelly's gonna walk a flight of stairs with squats on landing at work. Squats? Oh, nice. On landing at work both days. Yes, Kelly. And yeah, it can be helpful to have that plan in place, that if-then plan. If you have a sweet carb craving, or you're tempted by ice cream, you will choose, like, if I have this, then I will choose this. If I'm stressed at work, I will choose blank. All right, you guys. Well, I won't keep you. We ran a little over. If you want to share your fitness in here, I'll stay on. But and post it in the group. I'd love to hear it. Yay! Thanks, Melanie. See, y'all have the best weekend. And if anyone has any other questions, I'm here for you. So just anytime you post in the Facebook group, just tag me so I make sure I see it. If for some reason you haven't heard from me in like 10 hours. Yay. You are doing so good, and I'm so proud of you. And thank you for coming to this call. And have a great rest of your day.